Hi, everybody. My name is Enrique Torres. I'm the president of CTMS. First of all, thank you for being here and joining our seminar. Hopefully, everybody here gets to learn a little bit about cybersecurity, how awareness pertains to your organization, and hopefully you can take some of this information and make some good decisions for your organization going forward. A little bit on our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about some stats, a little bit about cybersecurity, how to create a culture in your company. What does that mean? What are some of the incentives that your companies have to implement cybersecurity in your organization? So I'm going to go ahead and basically just present. You mind if, Elise, do you mind if you share your screen and present for me, if you don't mind?
Certainly. Hold on one second.
So Elise is going to be my presenter for the slide, for a little slide presentation that I made, or that she made, and you guys can follow along. At the end, if you guys want, we will send you this presentation if you guys want. Okay, perfect. So again, I wanted to, I'm going to talk a little bit about, go ahead to the agenda, the next slide, at least. There you go. Talk a little bit about some of the incentives that you as a company have, or your companies have, to implement some of these cybersecurity and awareness packages. Next. Some statistics that are pretty standard is 95% of cybersecurity breaches are caused by human error. We all know that. Phishing attacks account for 80% of reported security incidents. Phishing attacks are those attacks that you see are when they send you emails on your mailbox that look like they're legit and they're trying to get you to click on something. Average cost of a data breach is $3.86 million per breach as of 2020. Next. So it's a staggering amount of figure. It's a lot of money. Go ahead and next. Oh, sorry. Last year, COVID-19 was credited for a huge rise in cybersecurity attacks. We all know why. People, working from home. A lot of people using their home networks, home computers. It was just a juicy time to be a hacker last year. Just a fun time. On average, each employee in your company or per company has access to 11 million files. And even small companies, because a lot of people go, man, I don't even have that many files in my company, but you got files and you have things that are important to you, to your company. You may not have 11 million, but those 20 files you have are valuable to you. So you do have valuable information, no matter how big or small your company is. Worldwide, cybercrime costs will hit $6 trillion annually by the end of this year. One question that I get a lot is, why do people do this? Because it pays. These are not the early days. When I first started in computers back in the early 80s, hackers were doing it for fun. People used to do it just because they wanted to know. They wanted to, they wanted to just experiment. It was a hobby for them. Those were the days of the guy in the basement, hacking at a keyboard, laughing and trying to break into phone systems and things like that. Today, this is a major operation. Some of these operations are funded by governments. There is a ton of money to be made when it comes to breaches and trying to get at data. And it doesn't matter if your company's big or small. It's a game of numbers. So if you have data, whether you think it's valuable to the hackers or not, it's valuable. You have to assume it is. Next one. So cybersecurity is bigger than technology. Another question I get a lot. Enrique, I have firewalls. I have all this. I have antivirus, and my computers are good, and I have up-to-date operating system. Technology is just a piece, and it's not enough. I always tell people, Google, Facebook, the government, they spend billions of dollars in technology and they still get hacked. So you're not going to throw money or technology at the problem and think you're going to be better off than they are. So it is a much bigger problem, and it requires much more than technology to be able to protect your data and your customers and yourself against cybersecurity threats. Next one. You have to create a culture in your company for that to handle cybersecurity. We all talk about culture. Well, in your company culture, cybersecurity has to be a part of it. How do you do that? You have to do it in 3 steps. First of all, you got to have a plan. There's nothing worse than having to come up with a solution in the middle of a crisis. You got to have a plan that you preemptively come up with to handle a lot of these threats. What am I going to do if I get breached? What am I going to do if I get a crypto on my company? How's that going to affect me? What are going to be my contingency plans? You got to have education for your users. Each one of your users, trust me as I tell you, each one of your users, including yourself, is a potential problem. Do they understand what the issues are? Do they understand the problems? Do they understand the consequences of their actions if they make a mistake, or what to do if they do? Cybersecurity education is a must. And you also got to have communication. Threats happen every day. New threats happen every day. Do you have anybody in your company who's up to date in what's happening? Does anybody know? Because if you don't know, you can't react. If you have a state-of-the-art router and there's a vulnerability on that router that just got published today, who in your company understands it and knows what it is and can react to it? So communication is a very important piece of creating that whole culture to protect yourself. Go ahead, next. Okay, so to be fully protected, or as much protection as you can possibly have. So I do want to say this, doesn't matter how much you have, 100% protection against cybersecurity, against cybercrime does not exist. It's impossible. But that doesn't mean that you can't strive to get to as close to 100% as you can. And to do this, I know for a minimum, you need to have 3 things. You got to have that foundation, that policy, procedures, and plans to make sure you know what to do if you're a victim of a cybersecurity threat. You know exactly what needs to be done at the time, or beforehand, not at the time of the problem, but before the problem happens. You got to have that culture, employee awareness. You got to have knowledge of the threats that are happening. So that whole awareness and knowledge of the existing threats and the existing landscape out there has to be part of that whole mix. And then the technology. The last thing is the technology. And it goes beyond traditional antivirus and firewalls. That's just basically the minimum. Okay. Today, we have a mixture of Internet of Things devices, computers, tablets, phones, watches, and now they're talking about having now you have light bulbs on the internet. Okay, so all of that, it has to be taken into consideration when you're trying to protect your infrastructure. So it's at this time, it's just way more than just traditional antivirus and firewalls. Next, okay. So let's talk a little bit about the foundation. Okay. Do you have access to cybersecurity assessment tools? Has your company ever been looked at to see, okay, what are my vulnerabilities today? What are my processes today? Do you have a technology data use and policy builder? Meaning, do you, in your employee manuals right now, and the stuff that you give your employees and and how you educate your employees, is there educational information on how you properly use the computers or systems? Now that's within your organization, because every organization might be different. Do you have an incident response plan? Do you have any idea of if I have this scenario happen, if I get a crypto virus attack and all my information gets encrypted, do I have a plan to react? Or is my only option, geez, I'm going to have to pay up? Okay, that's no good. And also ethical hacking. Have you ever even considered having somebody with actual hacking knowledge actually simulate an attack on your company and see what's happening? There's nothing there, there's a reason why militaries in the world do exercises and they simulate wars and they simulate scenarios. Ethical hacking is the same thing. It's basically, I'm going to take the opportunity and I'm going to hire some good hackers out there, and they're going to look at my infrastructure from the outside and see what they can get at so that I understand what my potential risks are. Next. Okay. Then the next thing is the culture. Okay. Do you have a system that alerts you of new threats? Or are you just relying on Google and Yahoo and some of the other publications are on the internet? Remember that if there's a 0-day attack, and what I mean by 0 day is something that just happened today, it got discovered today. It might be a month or two before you actually see it on the news and on the major publications. So a lot of these things you need to know before they hit the mainstream publications. Do you have phishing simulation tools? Meaning, do you send your emails, regular emails that basically look like legitimate emails for the express purpose of seeing who in my organization is clicking? So who in my organization is prone to getting phished and clicking on emails and clicking on links that shouldn't have been clicked on? Do you have awareness training videos? Okay. I know that a lot of times when you go to an employee lounge, you see like the OSHA posters, and also you see when you have a new employee coming in, they show you the nice video of welcome to such and such company. This is what we do, blah, 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 blah. Well, in those videos, is there anything that tells this new employee, hey, cybersecurity is important in our organization. This is what we expect you to do. This is what we expect you not to do. Are there training tools for your employees? So ongoing, are there things within your company that show your employees and in a continuous way what's going on, how to protect yourself, what not to do, what to do? Okay, next. And the last piece is then your technology, which once again, I said, goes way beyond your antivirus and your firewalls. Today, you have to look at things like multi-factor authentication or dual-factor authentication. Why? Everybody here has a house, and in your house, you usually have two locks. I hardly know anybody who has their front door and they just have one lock. Okay, you have two. You have the deadbolt and you have the key, right? Same thing with your systems online. We all rely on for too many years in just a simple password. And we all know somebody who uses one password and they use that same password for their email in Google, for their Office 365, for their computer, for their banking, okay, for everything. And then they wonder why they get hacked. Well, dual factor authentication is basically adding one more layer of security. You have your password and you have something else that you have to provide that system in order to show that you are who you are. A stolen password scanner. Hey, has my password ever been compromised? I think that a few years back, Yahoo got hit with a nasty breach, and there was something like 2 billion plus accounts that got hacked. And then because the fact that everybody uses this, a lot of people use the same password for everything else, that led to just a massive amount of breaches everywhere else. I would like to know if my password has ever been compromised. And a stolen password scanner basically does that. It goes out to the dark web and says, okay, here's my password. Has that ever shown up in any list? Now, obviously, If it has, that will be my cue to change it or use something else. Network vulnerability scanner. Has your company ever been scanned internally and externally to see what kind of problems your systems are reporting to have? You know, are your computers behind on patches? Your routers, your switches, even your things as simple as a copy machine in your organization, are they patched? Are they vulnerable? You know, people don't think about these things. And again, I said it earlier in the program that now we're adding phones and watches and this and that, and they're talking about adding all kinds of stuff. And now in the future, even your car is going to be part of a network. You know, these things all have patches and things that you have to worry about now. So a network vulnerability scanner is a good tool to know what's happening right now at this point in time with my systems. A website scanner is the next thing. We all have websites. Some of us have websites that are just informational. Others have websites that actually do stuff and interface with your clients to do something, an e-commerce site, a ticketing system. Us here at the managed services provider, we have systems that interface with other stuff, with other clients. So it's very important to know that websites, whether they're informational or not, whether they're connected to your infrastructure or not, that information, the website is, your website is a lot of times the first thing that people or hackers try to get at. So you want to know if your website could be potentially an entry point. A lot of us host our websites with third-party providers. Do we know that that third-party provider is actually securing our website? I know even if I have an informational website, I wouldn't want my website to be hijacked, and next thing you know, you go to my URL and some porn shows up or something like that. You know, you want to make sure that you check to see if your website is properly protected. Then the other thing is break detection and response. Do you have systems that actually are looking at your computers, at your routers, at your different systems, gathering all of those logs and all that data that's being generated? Because believe it or not, your computers generate and your systems generate a lot of data, and somebody has to look at it. A lot of times, even your network administrators and the people who are in charge of your cybersecurity, if they don't have the tools to gather all that data, it may be lost in the sea of data that you have that's being generated. Very easy to miss things if you don't have the tools to tell you, hey, I found an alarm. There's something here. Look at this. You need those tools. All right, next. Okay. Now, why would I do all this stuff? Ohio has the Ohio Data Protection Act that they passed in 2018, which in the state of Ohio, it basically says, hey, if I do and adhere to a cybersecurity standard, and there's many, here at CTMS, we like to adhere to the, what's it called? Oh, God, the acronym just escapes me. The NIST standard, the National Institute of Safety Standards, the NIST cybersecurity standards. If you adhere to a security standard, and if you're, for example, if you're in healthcare, it might be HIPAA or it might be PCI. But if you show that you do the best that you can to protect your systems, to educate your users, to implement the right technology, to have the right processes documented, and you show that you can do that, basically Ohio says, hey, you're basically immune from litigation. And that's a huge incentive, because if you get hit with you got to understand, if you get hit with a cybersecurity attack and data gets breached and it leads to stolen identities, it leads to stolen money or any type of a monetary loss for your client, and it gets traced back to you, you will be liable. So you'll be taken to court, and somebody on the defense, on the prosecution side, is going to say, do you do this? Do you have education for your users? Do you do regular checks on your systems? Do you patch? Do you have backups? You have enough yeses, and you show that you adhere to cybersecurity standards, they're going to say, hey, this company did the best that they could. They got hacked, but we did the best we could. You start throwing in some no's on that litigation, and you will be liable. You'll have to pay. So there's a huge incentive for every company, whether it's big or small, to at least adhere to these standards and implement the right processes, implement the right culture, and implement the right technology. And you'll be protected, which means you're covered, which means you're not liable. Next. So I didn't want to throw a ton of crazy information. I try to be brief. So here at CTMS, we certainly can help you with, reaching your goal. If you want to be protected, or if you want to know more about this, you certainly can reach out to us, reach out to Elise, and we'd be glad to help you with this. We have partners that cover all of the things that I've covered. We have partners and technology to cover it all, and we can help you with the culture, and the technology part. So with that, I'm going to open it up to questions.
Great job, Enrique. That was really, really well done. I loved the slides. I loved your presentation. So great job on that. You do have some questions from the audience that I'd like to give you. I have a ton of takeaways. Of course, you and I have chatted in the past. I have a lot of takeaways from your discussion. So great job. This question says, does IDX provide top level service?
IDX.
Yeah.
I'm actually trying to figure out what that acronym
Yeah,
is.
same. If whoever asked that question, if you'd like to throw in the box what you mean by IDX, let us know and I'll come back to that with no problem.
Samantha, can I just address it? That was
Sure.
my question.
Sure.
I don't know if you guys have heard it, but VW and Audi had a breach that was announced about a week ago. I received notification today, and one of the steps that Audi has taken is to obtain accounts at IDX to monitor any kind of conduct that may have resulted in the breach. And I've never heard of them before. I went in and I spent 2 hours this morning doing due diligence on this thing. And they seem to be a top level shelf, but I haven't got a clue what kind of protection steps or measurements they're providing. They're monitoring my email addresses, the credit worthiness, the any kind of conduct that I wouldn't be knowing about if some third party was trying to conduct business based on my information.
Okay, good question. Now I understand what that is. It's kind of like a service. That's very similar to, for example, we use our Defendify platform, which Samantha, which I don't know if you guys are familiar with, and be glad to have do it in another presentation on a one-to-one. But we have technology to, for example, to monitor your passwords. And make sure that's to make sure that for example, your passwords haven't been compromised. To look at your systems to make sure that they're protected. Scanning your existing systems for current vulnerabilities, and then going out to the dark web and checking to see what new vulnerabilities are out there, and doing regular scans on your network to make sure that you're protected. And then if you have, for example, intrusion detection on your network devices, that can help you flag if there's, for example, some weird activity happening, and you have intrusion detection protections on your board of devices. That can then set up alerts. So a lot of these things happen, and there's nobody watching. There's nobody monitoring. So these services are there to make sure that somebody's monitoring and actually reacting to these problems. Because like I said, if I'm sitting there and somebody's scanning my firewall for open pores, your firewall knows that, but who's looking at it? So a lot of these intrusion detection systems, what they do is they actually catch that and alert somebody to say, hey, something's going on here that's not right. And then that person, that human or artificial intelligence can actually say, okay, this is not normal. I'm either going to flag it or I'm going to stop it. So.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on Enrique, previous in his discussion, he talked about litigation and if there's data loss to an organization. So what happened at Audi or whatever other breach happens, based on state law, which is again something that Enrique brought up, there are organizations that if they do have data loss or there's personal information taken from their organization, they have an obligation to notify. And Don, if you are a customer of that auto dealership, they have an obligation to notify you that there was a breach, that data loss did actually happen, and that they are offering you a free credit service or a monitoring service in lieu of this litigation that they are now under. Mm-hmm. Any organization, like I said, Enrique went over this in the presentation, you have certain guidelines as an organization, responsibilities that you have to protect the data that you house. And just like Enrique said, whether it's the secret sauce, whether it's your employees' W-2s, whether it's your social security numbers, that secret sauce has to be protected. And when it's not, based on the state that you reside, you have an obligation to notify. So what Audi probably did was, because there was a security breach, they gave you a free service to monitor your emails and your credit for the next year so that that bad actor doesn't do anything with your information. Let me get to another couple of questions. I want to give Enrique some time. How do you handle WFH? All these acronyms, Enrique.
That's
I don't know.
Work from home. That's work from home.
Okay, good. I didn't even know that. So great job, Enrique. Thank you. How do you handle work from home situations?
That's a really, really good question, because last year brought up a really big eye-opening problem to companies, is that now I have workers working at home, connecting to my either cloud-based systems, or even worse, connecting to my VPNs and actually accessing my internal system. So now as a network administrator, I have to worry about these home nodes as potential breaches and security problems. That's a huge problem today, and you have to handle it from the operational perspective by having real good and clear policies and procedures of, hey, if you're going to work from home from your own device has to meet this minimum level of security and specifications in order for me to let you do that. If you don't, you either have to have a company-owned device that can connect to the company systems properly and securely, or you have to provide this technology, whether I provide it as an employer or that employee has to provide it themselves. So work from home has opened up some new challenges, because now you have to look at everybody's systems from home and make sure that they're okay. And I'm going to tell you that a lot of these home-based systems are just, I mean, you think about it, it's a little router I got from Walmart, from Best Buy. It's like 6 years old. Or worse, AT&T put it in there 10 years ago, 6 years ago, and it just works, right? I don't know if it's patched. I don't know anything. So it's a tricky situation, and companies need to really pay attention on what's connecting to these computer systems. Now, if you're connecting to cloud-based systems, implementing dual-factor authentication is important, because now there's no in between. I'm at home, I've got my little connection, my little laptop or tablet, or an old Android tablet, and I'm connecting to my to your cloud-based systems like OneDrive or Office 365 and downloading and working on documents. You got to be careful on it's basically being very careful of what you let in your door. And now that people are working from home, yes, you have to be able to look at those systems too as potential problems and look for vulnerabilities there, and make sure that you have the processes and the technology to handle those situations.
Absolutely. Can CTMS host a website as a third party?
We used to, but we don't anymore. There are many systems out there to do that. We certainly can help you choose the right one. We can help you, for example, depending on your needs or what you need as far as a website, tell you if you can just use a simple system like a Wix, or if you need something more custom, we can point you to other vendors that are good at it and can provide a secure website. Now, what we can do at CTMS is, after you choose your right web vendor, we can actually help you secure it and keep it secure by scanning it and holding these vendors accountable to make sure that they're patching things properly for you.
Awesome. Well, good. Well, thank you so much. I want to be cognizant of everyone's time. So takeaways for me, Enrique, and I hope for the rest of the group, is really inspect what you expect, right? If you see something, say something. So you really want to build the culture around your employees saying, hey, listen, if you see something different in the email, if it's weird, say something, right? If it's a link that looks a little different, don't click it. Just ask your IT or your security professionals within your organization, and to build that culture around that, and also to party with CTMS in efforts to do that, which you're offering. I suggest everybody visits the CTMS website, see what the full offering is, and of course reach out to Enrique and Elise. Will post their contact information via LinkedIn. So like I said, a ton of takeaways here. Great job. I do